the role of trade unions in enhancing work engagement, work commitment, job satisfaction, and job performance in government institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Mogotsi.
Enough not to throw anything in the air COVID-19 related. I think what's important is to start with a disclaimer as I greet you, that I'm here in my capacity as a student, not in my capacity from DPSA or a representative of DPSA. So the focus of the study, as indicated, was to look at the role of trade unions in four construct: work engagement, commitment, satisfaction, and performance. I've already dealt with the disclaimer. Now, as I was starting off in doing the research, as well as at the time I was doing the literature review, I instantly observed that there's not much written on trade unions, especially within the South African context. What you find in the main is historical origins of trade unions, how they were formed, they're black and white, how COSATU played a role, and all those. But in recent times, you don't find quite a lot. Of course, in articles and newspapers or you would find quite a lot of information on trade unions, but about what they intend to do, for example, lunchtime protest actions, or how they're fighting off the dispute around salary increases. Now, for you to be able to talk about trade unions, you need to understand how they're formed. They're quite complex. You need to know how they're formed, what they stand for, what they hope to achieve, how they're organized. Now, during the apartheid era, trade unions fought for a dual role, both for the liberation of the country, but also for workplace improvement of working conditions of employees. Now, post the apartheid era, it's like a post moment. What is the role of trade unions as we sit here? Now, the ongoing debates are amongst different stakeholders. These may be academics, practitioners, shop stewards, and the whole lot. For instance, what is the role of trade unions in the community, given the socioeconomic issues of water, sanitation, and poverty? What can trade unions do to attract the younger generation entering the market? I'm a 2000s. How do you attract the 2000s? What is the role or response to the fourth industrial revolution? You do know that with the fourth industrial revolution, they may bleed members as a result of the introduction of machinery. And Mr. Zwelin will also deal with it, as well as Marsha, the role of collective bargaining, especially the time that we find ourselves in it. The landscape is changing a bit. Insofar as collective bargaining is concerned, you would have seen the employer reneging on the third leg of the multi-term agreement, as well as the impact of the economy on workers. Now, like I indicated, you need to understand what trade unions are. They are codified in 213. Their role in the main includes to look at the living and working conditions of their members, issues of discrimination, participation, training, promotions, and wages, including member benefits like medical aid and so on. Now, why did I take an interest in work engagement? This is an old construct. It has been there for quite a while. But what's important from a literature point of view is that it's important for the sustainability, the growth of an organization. Now, how or what do you find in an employee that's engaged? Now, an employee that's engaged oozes in energy. I say this in the context of public service, where we're said to be the most unproductive, sluggish, and so on. You do need engaged employees in the workplace. You want people who, when they come to work, their energy resonates. You can see in their work that they're quite engaged. Also, the benefit of work engagement is that you then don't find employees wanting to leave the organization. So what you find is that their withdrawal tendencies are quite low insofar as work engagement. Now, from a literature point of view, what's the link between work engagement and trade unions? You do know that with the collective voice, you may be able to voice certain impediments that hinder you from engaging in your work. Remember, engagement has to do with how you are energized to do the work. From a commitment level, which is also interrelated in rationale with engagement, has to do with you wanting to stay in the organization, you wanting to stay as far as possible, you wanting to do the work. At times you come early to work, at times you leave, without anyone pressurizing you to do that. Now, employees as well that are engaged would want to be committed to their task, You know, you don't have to remind them all the time of deadlines. I've had, as a manager, quite a number of stories from employees saying I was waiting for, in the space of labor relations, I was waiting for PSC to send us the biannual, a letter of biannual report. I mean, we know these reports must be sent out. Now, a committed employee would know these deadlines, would be committed and would want to do the work as far as possible. Now, lower work engagement as well interlinks with lower performance. If you're not committed, you're not going to give a lot of work or do a lot of work. Now, why take interest in trade unions and commitment? Research has shown that where labor relations are poor, the commitment correlation is either significant or negative. Why take an interest in satisfaction? We spend a lot of time at the workplace. I mean, we spend 8 hours at the workplace. And it's quite a lot of time to be unhappy or disgruntled. Now, it's an area of interest. It's a very important area for trade unions to really look into. And as I deal with the findings and the recommendations, you get to see why. As I indicated, trade unions are important stakeholders. They have a role to play insofar as job satisfaction is concerned. As far as performance is concerned, and it's the most important because it's the output level, you find, especially after the performance cycle, a lot of PMDS-related disputes. Now, if trade unions don't take care of this, it creates a lot of work for them. It has a knock-on effect. If, for example, you would see a spike in grievances, thereafter a spike in referral of disputes relating to PMDS, and it's a phenomenon that we're used to by now, you know. So you must take interest in it because you're going to have a lot of work to, or referrals to do, a lot of grievances, and you know, it also affects the mood around the time. Especially towards the end of the cycle, or even during performance assessments. Now, the research design was a quantitative one, classified as cross-sectional. The population. I looked at level 1 to 16, even though we know it's 2 to 16. These included trade unions at the workplace in the capacity as shop stewards. The total population was about 2,600, and the sample size was 1,000. These were measuring instruments that were used. The Utrecht Work Engagement Scale, the Organizational Commitment Questionnaire for satisfaction, the short form of the Minnesota Job Satisfaction Questionnaire, as well as the role-based questionnaire. But these were not taken in the raw format. They were adapted. So these are adapted scales that were used. Now, what did I find in the results? In the main, I found that, and need I say that majority of the employees in the institution I was working at, or I was looking at, were from NEHAU and PSA. And then the rest fell under other. This would be your NUPSO and the rest. Now, I found in the main that trade unions were not, in particular these two, if not three, if I include other, were not enhancing work engagement, commitment, satisfaction, and performance at the workplace. Now, they were not doing it, probably not aware, or they thought these constructs are afterthoughts. In looking at these four constructs, as I'm about to get into these, either you look at it from a proactive measure or you are retroactive. And what I find from trade unions is that in the main, they prefer to be retroactive. There are a number of things they can do to be able to be proactive to the situation, because PMDS will stay with us for a very long time. Even though you do know that the MPSA, Minister of Public Service and Administration, issued the incentive policy framework last year, which talks to the payout of performance bonuses. I don't know if you're aware of that. That was since moved from 1.5% of the total compensation budget to 0.75 this year as we implement the results. Next year, 0.5%, and the subsequent year, 0%. Now, as there is discourse around the implementation, the rationale started a long time ago as I look at it, you know. The rationale of public service wage bill, or cutting down on public service wage bill, started a while back, you know. Starting from 2019, you saw, or you will have noticed, the move of government towards cutting budget. What this means is that this year, comrade, your members will get 0.75%. Next year, 0.5%. Subsequent year, 0% in terms of performance bonuses. Now, the result of the study so far as commitment level is that 57.6% of the participants slightly agreed that trade unions enhanced work engagement. Insofar as job satisfaction, 53.6% of the participants somewhat were satisfied with the role of trade unions in job satisfaction. Performance results show that 54% of the respondents slightly disagreed that trade unions were enhancing work engagement. The results also showed a correlation between the four constructs. This would be engagement, commitment, and satisfaction, that they relate to each other. For example, where you see commitment level high, you then see a peak in the performance of the employees. So these are quite interrelated. In fact, the three are interrelated more with performance, because if you take care of the first three, you find that the performance level of the employees go high. It also showed a positive relationship between work engagement and two dimensions of work commitment, and these are continuance and normative commitment. The final results also produced a model which was initially in a thesis but changed quite significantly when we got to the results. But for the purpose of today's discussion, I won't deal with the model. Now, I want to spend most of my time and the remaining time on the recommendations. As I indicated, I wish not to get into the debate around what's happening so far as the third leg, implementation of the third leg. But you would have seen the Minister of Finance last week, was it on Thursday or Wednesday, talking to massive public sector wage cuts. You saw that it's about 37 billion if media reports are to be believed. Subsequent year, it's about 60 billion. The next year is about 90, and ultimately 150. Now, while these recommendations may be standard insofar as what should be done, but no one, I suppose, would have anticipated what would unfold thereafter, in that we would see a move from government not wanting to implement. And you would know that unions were pushing for a one-term agreement, and it's the employer that said, no, let's go for a three-term, which is historic because it would have been the third. Now, where we're sitting is that the matters are before court and before the PSCBC. I wish not to get into the merits or demerits of the two positions from organized labor as well as the employer. Now, what should trade unions do? Trade unions must take care of this conducive environment. And remember, this was a recommendation towards 2019 as I graduated. But then the question remains, how do I do this when the employer is poking on my face? When the employer, we sat there, we agreed on the multi-term agreement. We sat there and we agreed that we are going to give members this percentages. And this year, it so happens that you are not going to implement. You continue to spend quite a lot of money in litigation, postponements, preliminary issues. What does it mean, really? Should it be the role of trade unions only to ensure a working relationship at the workplace? No, you need the employer as well to play its role. Now, also to deal with engagement level of employees, you need to really take care of the work that employees do. What I find in government is that, and the reason why you have a spike in satisfaction level, a person does the same work, there's no rotation policy or even allowance of rotation. And if you can see, most of the grievances, if you look at your own stats in various departments, majority of the people that put in grievances are the same old people that you know about. Why? They have all the time to lodge grievances. They probably don't have work to do, or the work that they do is not engaging enough, or they're not satisfied with the work that they do. And that's where trade unions come in, because if you don't take care of that environment, you are likely going to have to deal with a lot of dispute cases relating to performance, or even misconduct cases emanating from that. Now, look at these issues, especially as you bargain. Let this be a standing agenda item. I've talked about the negotiation for pay that's proportionate as a motivation factor. But in the current environment that you find yourself, especially because we're about to enter into negotiations for post the third term agreement, what does it really mean? But it also has a knock-on effect on chambers in provinces, be it PSCBC chambers or GPSSBC chambers in the workplace. I find even in my own workplace, there's resistance from trade unions to want to engage, because the employer is one. You may be in Free State, but the employer is one. So when we consult on policies, now recently we were consulting on PMDA's policies, I say, let's not talk about that. Even though the platform to talk about salaries is not at the DBC or at the GPSSBC at provincial level, but there's great distrust of trade unions in engaging with the employer, because the employer now is seen as somewhat sinister or unreasonable or untrustworthy. Now, trade unions should be consulted in the drafting of policies, because that's where it starts really. How do you factor in satisfaction issues? For example, when you talk to recruitment and selection policy, how do you ensure that you keep issues like recruiting internally within the department, giving preference to employees in the department? Now, that's where you begin to play a role insofar as proactively doing so, to ensure that there's satisfaction in the workplace of employees and by implication your own members. I also said, and having observed in that government institution, that I didn't find many of them participating. So probably there's an issue of shop steward in that workplace. But also, trade unions have a role to play in ensuring that employees get along. Now, recently, we had our own issues where I work. And trade unions, in a surprise move, I saw them coming not to defend their member, but coming there to allay fears, rectify the situation, and we're able to find things in that space or in that workplace. Now, they have a role to play. The issue of performance feedback, we have seen people saying they've not gotten performance outcomes. I mean, in this day and age, people saying, or members saying, I've not received, or getting your performance outcomes, and by outcomes I mean after moderation, just after, on the corridors. No, you know, it's quite surprising in the public service. And I've observed that even if you can look at a number of, say, the GPSSBC annual report as well as the PSCBC annual report, the number of PMDS-related cases are quite scary. Now, give feedback as the employer, but also after appeals where trade unions are members in some departments, give feedback to members. Of course, this is a dual role. Engagement, satisfaction, performance is a dual role. The reason why we use the word enhance is the realization that in reality, the employers have systems already. For example, in PMDS, we have the EPMDS policy. But we wanted to check how trade unions, so I wanted to check how trade unions play a role given that they're in this tripartite working relation with the employer. I also argued that it's time that trade unions also observe. Even though there's a struggle even in observing in interviews, sometimes even at SMS level. So there's this great distrust. But if I'm there and I see that the process is well, I'll be most likely be able to explain to my member what happened or even formulate a position thereafter. The training of employees remain of utmost importance, of course, because it's linked to performance or optimal performance. Absenteeism level resulting from satisfaction is a serious problem. You find many cases of absenteeism in the workplace. What are we doing about it? Because it's a satisfaction level. There are people who don't come to work not because they don't know how to do the work or they don't want to do the work, but because they are dissatisfied, be it from management, management style. There are just some managers that can make you not want to wake up in the morning, or because of the work that they do. So there are quite a number of factors which have a knock-on effect on you or can create a lot of work for you as trade unions. I've already talked about meaningful consultation, and this also applies to the employer by meaningful consultation. When I call you in the table and I say, let's consult on these policies, I'm not there to rubber stamp the decision. I'm there to effectively engage, give my inputs, and at least consider my inputs and show that you have considered my inputs. What we find in the public service in the main, having been in 4 or 5 departments, is this big brother and younger brother mentality. We're not partners, eh? I only come there just for compliance and I'll consult with you. So there must be meaningful consultation, as well as take care of the frustrations of employees. Not only by lodging grievances. You have 90 days to do that, and anything can happen informally to do that. You can engage management, because what I find now, CCMA, GP, PSCBC, and all sector bargaining councils, there's this tendency to increase the number of commissioners. You see it all the time, full-time, part-time commissioners. Is that the way to go, really? Because if you don't take care of this aspect, they have, as I indicated, a knock-on effect for everyone. I'm here to see the reaction of GP and even PSCBC at times on what they will say about levies. We've always been at 1 rand something, 7 rand something. Do we really want to go to the cost of bread in levies? Because eventually it's going to go there. If you don't take off these 4 constructs at the workplace, you're going to have a lot of dispute related, and you may have to employ more commissioners to deal with these disputes. So I don't think it's the way to go. You hear of CCMA being one of the most in terms of the referrals taken care there. But is that the way to go in terms of dispute resolution? Can't all these things be dealt with at the workplace, with the trade unions playing a more active role, not only relying on the employer to do something? Like any study, this study had its own limitations, the use of cross-sectional study, because the results can't be generalized. But I also noticed that there was a low response rate. I got about 460 something questionnaires out of 1,000. And remember, this institution had regions, you know. So you got trickles here and there. You found one region having more questionnaires to amount to 467. But I also noticed the low response rate of SMS members, because these were also dispute to SMS members. So do they not belong to trade unions? Don't they want to belong to trade unions? Do they not trust that trade unions would do the work? Are we, in our engagements with management, doing a good job in inspiring confidence in them to also be members of your own trade union? So I found that as a limitation, because I wanted to hear and know the views of SMS members as well, but also the use of a quantitative only. Had I used perhaps a mixed approach, quanti and quali, I could have got more information from the quali side, which includes interview. What are the recommendations for future study? One would be that you conduct the same in various provinces. This was in Northwest Province. Look into the issue of low response rate. Are they not members? Why are they not members of trade unions? The use of quanti, I've said, the mixed approach is very important to get to views or information from both sides. Because remember, with quantitative and questionnaires, you have these preset questions. While I would have loved to have more open-ended questions and get more information relating to it. It's just when you were telling me 5 minutes. So you can find the research, full research on the repository of Northwest University on that, or you can simply type my name on the website. You'll find 2, the master's one and the PhD one, but the PhD one will, or both would have the same topics. Why at that stage of effective participation, interactive session or question? Remember, we lost about 10 minutes. I would have hoped to go more, but it's okay. Over to you, MC Lera. Should I sit down? Can I sit down?
Ladies and gentlemen, apologies again for rushing our speaker, but we had technical problems on our side. The house rules for questions, there should be a mic that will be moving around. Please do engage our doctor here on other questions. His email address will be on the SASLAW app as well as the presentation. If you do want to think more about the type of questions and engage more, feel free to email him and to interact with him during the corridors. Thank you very much. I think I'll leave it to the people here around to formulate their questions. I'll take a few. Okay, the gentleman over there.
Should I descend to the podium or wait?
You can stand at the podium, sir. I'll also try to lose weight in the process. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I don't know if it's working, but okay. Yeah, thanks for that. My name is Pumuzo Gama, and I'm working for Nedbank. Just a question, and I think you sort of presented on employee engagement and worker participation. And I want to just get your thoughts, and especially now where we are in this 4th industrial revolution and so forth. And I think more than anything, when the conference started, much was said about when we're looking at various dispute resolution during, from level 5 during the COVID period as we are in, we had found that a lot of the social partners, be it CMA or even in you know, the various courts, there had to be a sort of working together between whether it was trade unions, employers, and so on, in trying to find solutions towards how it is that cases are going to be heard, whether it's the CCMA or the courts. Now, a very important, but I think quite neglected aspect of the Labour Relations Act is worker forums. Now, we have found over a number of years that the concept of worker forums, as stipulated in our Act, has failed. It has failed on the basis that a number of employers have not taken it up, or alternatively find that a lot of trade unions have lost, have no confidence because of a number of reasons. I won't go into those. And one of the purposes of that was to really seek to address the issue of worker engagement between employer and employee. In respect to your paper, what would your view be? Do you think that they could still work in their current form, or do you think maybe they need to be amended in order for them to be effective, so that parties, either employer and basically both, would take them up? Sure.
How are we doing in terms of time? Should I take all the questions or answer as they come? Lira, guide me.
Okay, I think you can answer that one question and we'll take it from there.
Okay, it depends on the sector, really. In the public service, I do find that you would rather do it at a macro level, be it the DBC or even chambers, GP level, because this is a common thread amongst different departments. So I would rather have that discussion at a macro level than have the same team go to this workplace, deal with the same issue and the same workplace. Of course, in the private sector to be different, because you are talking probably about one institution. I do think workplace forum have a place now, because it's at a closer level. It assists to establish rapport with management. You get to voice opinions quite instantly and give the views of employees quite instantly. So to answer you in short, I find the workplace forum, so I would urge that, especially in your place or Nedbank, that workplace forums is probably the way to go, even though it's a neglected area. But you do find resistance from management at times, because they come with a big ranks. I'm a chief director, I'm the ED, I'm the, quite intimidating to these trade unions. So at times they are not that effective when you look at power relations issues, as well as the knowledge of the people who are representing at the workplace.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, can I just allow one short question, and then, because we have some time in our hands.
Okay, thanks. My name is Solim Polaisa. I'm from Sefako Makhato Health Science University. Just straight to my questions in relation to your presentation, and basically in relation to the studies that you took. One basic important aspect that I'm very interested on, you have alluded to the fact that in your recommendations, 36.2% in terms of the employees that were done when the sample in have indicated to say not necessarily that the labor movement or the union are really enhancing their capacity around that. Does it mean in essence that whatever views that portrayed out there, they are not in favor of the union, or they don't necessarily see the role of the union within the organizations? And the last part will be, your studies are basically done within the public service that I can see. What will be your view in relation to the private sector vis-a-vis the public service in terms of the studies? Thanks.
Thanks. You do know, I'll start with the last one. You do know that it was in the public sector, and I put a limitation there to say this could perhaps be done in the other sectors, including the private sector, state-owned enterprises, just to find what is the situation there. These constructs are found everywhere you go in the workplace. Engagement, satisfaction, performance are found everywhere, even in the private sector. So my view would be that a study should be conducted like I recommended. I would not want to preempt what the results would be there, because you never know how they would answer the questions or respond to the interviews, which would sometimes, you do know that in one study you can find those in favor and those not in favor, all these contradicting results. So I would rather allow that such a study be conducted in that space, because the dynamics also differ. You know, in the public service, the culture and the dynamics differs quite greatly from state-owned enterprise as well as the private sector. On the role of trade unions, that's why I indicated as well as a limitation, because with preset questions, you sometimes may have different interpretations of what the results are. Even though the hypothesis will explain to you, even though the literature will then explain to you the direction as well as the relationship between the hypothesis and the results. But in this context, we're saying, or members were saying, no. Remember, it was a yes or no. Are they enhancing in this area? Yes or no? And they said, no, they are not enhancing. And that's where the qualitative aspect came into play, because just after that, no, you would have wanted more information emerging out of that, you know, more answers coming out of that, in order to beef up why they are saying the no. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our first discussion for the day. Would like to thank Dr. Mogotsi for his time and for his valuable input. Please feel free yet again to utilize the app to post more questions. As a token of our appreciation, the comment you'd like to exercise on COVID as well, social distancing and all of that, hashtag.
What is the value? After. Or is it less than 350?
Disclaimer, I have no business in what's going on.
Enjoy your day and the rest
Thank
of
you
the
very
conference,
much.
colleagues. Thanks for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a quick change to the next venue, but we're going for a lunch break. So please feel free to go engage in lunch. We'll be allowing you guys 5 minutes between changing sessions to settle down. Thank you very much.